at Pipeline Quarry. We are back in the east, and it is good to be back traversing familiar areas that I know so well. Good morning, my name is Lauren. Rian is on camera. Don't know how long this giraffe is going to hang around for, but we're going to try and stick with it for just a little bit because this is a natural water hole, and we have had some of the most fantastic sightings here with elephants, but still. And already the water is receding. Rihanna, if we can just look at sort of that area at 12 o'clock, we couldn't cross this previously. It was all water. At one point we could drive through it, but then it got far too deep. We could not drive through it. So you can see the water levels are really, really changing here. It's getting smaller and smaller. But don't let me forget to tell you this is a live and interactive experience. We want you to talk to us. We want your questions and we want your discussion topics because Escape to Nature is a lot slower paced, it's more immersive, and we want to get into those discussions. So please do talk to us, send in your comments and questions on the app or the website. All you need to do is register to be able to do that. If you're on YouTube, no problem. Just hit subscribe to make sure you get all our wonderful notifications. And I guess the last important thing I have to say is that this is the last day of Escape to Nature. There will be no more Escape to Nature for now. We're reviewing a lot of our offerings. But as from tomorrow, we will only have Madikwe and Amakala on. Not only, sorry, but we'll have Madikwe and Amakala on the sunrise and the sunset. So we'll still be around. We're not going anywhere. And talking of Amakala, they are on Escape to Nature today. Andrew and Ralph is manning the water holes. Mallory, you're right. What a beautiful way. I know the East so well. I love Madikwe and I love the Northwest and I love it all, but this is just like home. It's like coming home. We're back at Jackie's and I just know all the pans and the areas and the water holes and the movements. I'm familiar with it. We sort of drove here for months. And I was looking for elephants and lo and behold, we got giraffe and I'm not complaining. I love giraffe sightings in Madikwe. So we won't be visiting Clo Dam, I'm afraid. Yesterday was our last day there, but we will sort of explore the east and see what we can find. Might even just sit by a water hole. Clifting is doing very well. Huge numbers. I don't have the numbers for you, but huge, huge numbers. Really, giraffes are everywhere, and you will often find the lions on a giraffe kill. It's really, really common to see that. They are just so numerous. And the joy about Madikwe, as well as Amakala, but I would say the Madikwe herds are much larger. You just get lots of giraffes together at one point in time. It's just really nice to see. Whereas in the Lowveld, that's not so common, high numbers of giraffes like that. You may see a few together, but not like you see in Amakala or Madikwe. Madikwe herds rival the Masai Mara. I love it when you just see this head judging you from far away. Yes, what are you judging me for? Oh, now, yes, you've been seen. The little hedge just pop up over the thicket. But I would say Madikwe is so diverse, and every corner of Madikwe really offers something so different. We've tried to show you the most of it. We don't go south, I'm afraid, very, very south. We just don't get signal down there at all. We have tried. And each area offers something so different in terms of geology, terrain, topography, vegetation. And this naturally influences the animals. So some areas are better for seeing animals than others. Some animals will prefer a specific vegetation, a specific soil type. And I think in all my travels of Madikwe, the east, where we are, is definitely the best for giraffes. You do see them in other parts, don't get me wrong, but if you really are looking for them, the best place to check is the east. And that's just my opinion. Maybe over the years that changes. You know, nothing in nature is static. Everything is constantly changing. So if you leave an area, say for 5 years, and come back to it, you might actually find that a lot has changed in that time. But as it stands now, I would say the east is really, really wonderful for giraffe sightings. And my favourite sighting of this stint has definitely been that giraffe carcass. It was just kept giving and giving and giving. The gift, it would not stop. And it just shows you what a body like this can sort of offer for other animals. Shelly B, you're saying that male that we were watching looked like he had a sore back leg. Oh, I didn't notice, Shelly B. I was looking at something else. Very possibly. He's there. I just don't know if we'll get a view of his legs again. This seems to be a bachelor herd. But well noticed, Shelly B. My bad. I was focusing on something else and I didn't notice that he had a sore back leg. Sometimes you guys notice something that we don't. My eyes can only look at one thing, and you guys get a much clearer view sometimes than we do. And I love your inputs, and some people will say, Lauren, you missed this. And we've actually in our past driven past leopards, we've driven past lions, and it's actually the viewers that have spotted the leopard in the corner, because if we're not looking that way, we just miss it. And of course the cameraman's very much focused on the camera, and the naturalists are very much focused on sometimes talking nonsense. Not always, though. But what a fantastic start, really. I'm very excited to see what today has in store. I already know it's going to be stinking hot, but we are going to send you all the way over to Amakhala to say good morning to Andrew.
Welcome everybody, thanks for joining us out here in the Eastern Cape Bushveld here on the beautiful Amakhala Game Reserve. And we are in Carnarvondale at the moment, and slowly we're going to make our way to the eastern parts, exploring the nice aloe environment out there. But for now, we've got some nice blesboks in the open grassland. Hello everybody, my name's Andrew, and Morgan, he's behind the camera still. Hope you're all doing very well and excited to be with us. It is the last escape to nature today, so we'll be sure to make the most of it. Awesome stuff. Yeah, we've been watching these blesboks. They're so funny because they've been chasing the warthogs a little bit, and the warthogs have been chasing the blesboks a little bit. To be honest with you, it just seems like everybody is having a good time here in the open plains. Look at those warthogs running around. There's actually quite a good number of warthogs here. So at least 2, 3, 4, 7 or 8 warthogs here. It's quite nice. A sounder of warthogs, that's what we call them. That's the collective noun. Not sure what blesbok is. Never thought about that. If anybody else knows what the collective noun for blesboks is, please share. Oh, Yolanda, that is such a nice comment. Thank you so much. That puts a pep in our step, and we are going to make it happen today. Thank you very much. I hope you're doing well too. Excited to be with us? Yeah, it's actually quite a nice day here in the Eastern Cape. There's a bit of cloud cover. We were expecting it to be a lot colder this morning, and I'm sure you saw when the camera was on me, I am bundled up. I've got my shirt plus a t-shirt underneath, a hoodie, a fleece and a jacket, and a short pair of shorts. So I am overdressed for the occasion, but that's okay. I can always just take off the layers. Yeah, we really enjoy the nice warm days here in Amakhala, because now we are slowly heading towards winter, and before we know it, it is going to get cold out here. Shame, and I remember Lauren, who was here this time more or less last year. I think she came in August. It was particularly cold that time of the year. Shame, and I think, if you're not used to the Eastern Cape and you get hit with that cold, it's quite a strong cold if you ask me. But being a local to this area for the last 7 or 8 years, I've gotten used to it. You learn to get along with the weather out here, that's for sure. I don't know what it is with that one Blesbok ram, but every time those warthogs get too close to him, he sort of just puts his head down and he wants to go for them. And he's actually circling them now. So I'm not sure if it's sort of protecting a nice little sweet patch of grass there. Could be that. I'm not willing to share with the warthogs. Justin, that is a beautiful comment, and you are totally 100% right. That's the whole point of us being out here. We are immersing ourselves in nature, and we're letting nature present itself, essentially. That's the beautiful thing about going on safari, is you can plan as much as you want, but ultimately you have to go out there with a mindset of, what is nature going to show us today? That's another thing I love about these safaris, is that there's no guarantee, absolutely no guarantee on seeing things. And no matter how good you are, I often say it's, how does that saying go? It's a cup of luck and a teaspoon of skill. That's it. So there's a lot of luck out here. But one of the best feelings you can ever experience on a game reserve is if you've got fresh animal tracks and you follow those tracks and then you find the animal. That is such a rewarding feeling. Now, myself and Morgan, we've done some very successful tracking of elephants on a few occasions this week, actually. We followed their tracks in the dune thickets, and with the tracks, and you see how the tracks move around, you sort of, you get an idea of what the animal's thinking and the way it's moving, and then you can start to plan ahead. Maybe it's going to cross this road, or maybe it's going to go that direction. And then when you find the animals, it's just really a great feeling. Now, sometimes, a lot of people will think that surely it's not too hard to track an elephant. But you'd be surprised. Elephants, sometimes they leave very little signs behind. They walk very gently on the earth's surface. And when they go into those dune thickets, wow, you need to have some really solid eyes. Just listening to a few little birds chirping in the grassland here. It's an African pipit. It's one of my favorite sounds to hear in these grassland areas, because it just reminds me every single time, without fail, of my time in my chapter out in the Kalahari. That was such a beautiful, was it 3 years that I was there? 3.5 years, something around about there. It was a good experience. Look at all these blesbucks just looking at us, their white faces in our direction. And those warthogs just taking off on their hoof, stopping every now and then running more. Our warthogs can be tricky to get on camera because they just never stop moving. Very pretty environments. Yeah, I agree with Jordan, our director. She loves it when warthogs run. I think they're very distinguishable when they run because, you see their bums in the air and then their tail sticking out the grassland. So it's really, really nice to watch them running. But there's a reason why they do run with their tail up. Remember, they do rely on following one another, and especially if they're little wartlets, little babies following the mom is going to make it easy for them. Raises her tail up against or above the grassland, and they're able to see her tail flicking through the grass, and they can follow. It's important to stay together as a unit or a family, especially if you're in the wilderness and there's predators around. Stay together. So most of these blesbuck are actually rams, males, and there's one or two females in there, and there's actually a lamb that was born sometime last year in the group. We should start heading towards the breeding season, close to the beginning of summer, around about there. They may even start rutting a little bit in the winter time, so that they can give birth in the summer months, and that's when the food and water is going to be available. So they've got to try and plan ahead if they can, otherwise their young just won't survive. They're actually quite territorial animals, blesbuck. You'd be surprised. You see these rams, they have these middens, and they defecate in the same little spot, and it becomes a little black patch on the road. Sometimes they even sit in the midden. And when they're sitting in the midden, if they see another blesbuck or some sort of disturbance around them, they immediately stand up, start defecating again to show off their dominance, and then they let out this good old-fashioned snorting sound. Gina, they do sometimes injure each other during fights. Sometimes you get stabs in the neck and under the bellies and things like that. But when you see them fight, it's head on head or horns on horns, and they ram into each other. But then you get a situation where one of them is going to be a loser and he tries to run away, and this is where it becomes dangerous for them, because on the motion of turning to run away, can get stabbed in the neck or in the belly. And generally speaking, these deep stab marks or wounds made by the other blesbuck, generally speaking, the chances of survival, depending on where they're being stabbed, can be quite low. I've never seen impala stab each other. I know this is not impala, but I had a friend in the Kruger National Park, and he saw two impalas fighting. One got stabbed quite badly between the neck and the stomach. And this guide actually watched the poor impala pass away. So then he said to his guests, shall we go for a sundowner drink, and then we'll come back here this evening and see if there's no hyenas or jackals. And they said, cool, let's go for sundowner. When they came back, that impala was already hoisted up into the tree. So a leopard had found it, and he got to show his guests leopard eating on that impala that they had witnessed, having a fight with another impala and getting severely injured. Amazing just to watch those sequence of different events take place. Now sometimes with blesbok, you actually see them, when they're walking, they're constantly snorting and blowing air out the nose, like they're sneezing. And then sometimes you see them walking and they're bobbing their head up and down, almost like they're listening to music or something like that. And what is happening is they do have a parasite, a fly that actually goes up their nose, up the nostril, and lays an egg in their nasal cavity. And then that fly sort of reaches the end of its life cycle. That's the botfly I'm talking about, by the way. And then this little maggot hatches and becomes, a larvae and lives in this nasal cavity of the blesbok. Now it does start to move around, and it's not very comfortable for the blesbok, and they just cannot stand it. So often bobbing their head up and down, they try and dislodge this larvae. And then by blowing air out the nose, they're trying to literally remove it from the nasal cavity by blowing air. But it's interesting that needs to happen as part of the life cycle for the botfly. It needs to, be laid up the nasal cavity so that when it hatches, it's going to have some mucus to feed on. And then the next part of its life cycle is it needs to be blown out so that it can hit the grass. And then the next stage of its life cycle kicks in, where it starts to morph into a botfly. Very interesting, but I can't imagine anything worse, having a maggot living inside the nose. It doesn't harm them at all, it just feeds on the mucus. And it's said that it can actually benefit the blesbok, because as it feeds on the mucus, it does clear the airways a lot more, and blesbok are able to breathe a lot better. Amazing how nature works. There's always a link. When we think something is bad, that it's sometimes not bad. Sometimes it's good. So when we look at this environment here, Jenna, 100% I agree with you. That would be something. I think I would go straight to the doctor and say, no, you must take this thing out. I cannot live with this thing in my nose, especially when it wriggles around. Can you imagine? But the blesbok, that's part of their life. I mean, that's at some point in their life they can expect that. But if you look at this environment where they're actually in a very good spot, because, of course, we know that that Phumelela is here with her daughter somewhere on this reserve. I don't know if they're still together. I doubt they're still together. But when you have an environment where there's predators in that environment, the antelopes, the food essentially, needs to really be vigilant. They need to choose the areas where they're going to be in very carefully. Now, blesbok is a plains game antelope. They're going to live indefinitely in these vastly open areas. They don't really go into thickets. It's far too dangerous for them to go into thickets. So by, sitting in the middle or walking around in the middle of a vastly open area, they're constantly looking around, And if a predator is seen in the distance, they can run, and they do run pretty quick. I'm not sure of their exact speed, but also their endurance is very good. So provided that they see a predator early enough, they can gallop off and get out the area quite easily. Now, even though cheetahs run extremely fast, 100, 110 kilometers an hour, around about there, which if I do the maths for you, it's going to be about, so it's 22, so let's call it 30 meters per second. Now, cheetahs can't sustain that for very long. So if a cheetah tries to hunt a blesbuck by running from 100 meters away, that's going to be a fail. Cheetah, even though it does run fast, it's going to need to ambush the prey as best it can. So try and sneak up to it as close as possible and then strike. But if there's a certain gap between the blesbuck and the predator, and it doesn't need to be a very big gap, you'll find that blesbuck will more than likely be able to get away.
Thanks to our wonderful Wild Earth explorers, Wild Earth Kids is back. Your monthly subscriptions have allowed us to relaunch Wild Earth Schools on a weekly basis, every Wednesday for the first hour of the Sunset Safari.
You guys bring a smile to my face every single day.
Sign your class up for a special virtual field trip to Africa, because touching the lives of the future protectors of our Earth truly matters.
I could just hear a pied barbet calling in the distance. Sounds very much like a common fiscal, but not quite the same. And not too long ago, I can't remember who I was with. I think it could have been BK. But we saw a white-browed sparrow weaver here in Carnarvondale. Can you believe it? I've only ever seen one. White-browed sparrow weaver. A leucistic fork-tailed drongo has been spotted in Carnarvondale as well. And in case you don't know what a leucistic drongo is, but basically it's a fork-tailed drongo that isn't black but completely white. We have, myself and Morgan, we've seen a leucistic guinea fowl, a totally white guinea fowl, which is quite different. There's been leucistic Denham's bustards spotted on Amakhala before as well. And just like that, the blessed say, enough's enough, and off we go. Okay, it was quite nice watching these blessbucks and warthogs while it lasted. But we're going to send you over to Lauren in Madikwe Game Reserve. Let's see what she's got.
Well, it's not Clo Dam, but it's still a dam with Clo. It's Shukuru Dam. A huge dam that I haven't seen too much happen at, but look at this. The ellies are well and truly here. It's already really hot, slightly uncomfortable, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning. It's unbelievable. It was cold this morning. It's remarkable how much it heats up. But this is part Kalahari. It's a bit of a melting pot here between the sort of Kalahari environment and the Lowveld. So you'll see vegetation that belongs to both and terrain that belongs to both. It's a bit of a hot spot between the two, which makes it so remarkable. You definitely get the Lowveld rainfall and the sort of Kalahari terrain, and it mixes itself into the wonderful place that we know as Madikwe. You guys better not be thinking about leaving. You can see these elephants are really red. They're not all. All the elephants look like they are genetically diverse in terms of color, but they're not. The elephants are all the same color. It is the soil and the sediment that we've been spending the most time on. Some of the ellies that we saw at Clo Dam were so white, they looked like they'd come from Namibia, Etosha. But it's just because the soil up there is a sort of clay soils that is white in colour. Whereas these ellies have definitely been spending their time in the northeast on that rufous red soil. And it sort of gives them that chestnut colour, but it's just the soil and the dust that they've covered themselves with. It's not actually the colour of the ellie. Harvey, you are continuing on this wonderful conversation of botflies. Oh, thank you for this conversation, Andrew. I believe they can. The only studies that I'm familiar with regarding botflies, I'm going to tell you my own experience with botflies in just a minute and how I know them so well, but the only studies that I've ever read come from Asian elephants. which is obviously not what we're looking at right now. We're looking at African elephants. And sometimes the flies, adults, are actually able to lay their eggs near the mouth or the base of the tusks. But as for African elephants, I haven't sort of read any studies on that, but I would imagine it is possible. I don't think they would have any particular sort of avoidance for botflies. I actually spent some time in Amazonian Ecuador, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, but it was very challenging. Oh, the Amazon is... it is the wildest place you could ever go, and it's almost like every single organism has taken steroids. The butterflies are so much bigger than the butterflies you see here. The spiders are so much bigger. Snakes are bigger. Everything's bigger. Everything's dangerous. Everything is just... it's incredible. The Amazon is incredible, but it's also terrifying. And you literally never know what you're going to wake up to. I did wake up a few times to a tarantula on my mosquito net. Inches away from my face, but that's just not what you want to wake up to, really, as much as I appreciate spiders now. And to get to my point, we had botflies. I actually had a botfly, and I immediately got it professionally removed by a medic there. However, my lecturer was a man who thoroughly enjoyed the experience, and he enjoyed growing the botflies, watching that sort of swelling in the skin, knowing exactly what it is and what's happening, and waiting for them to emerge naturally. Horrifying. But, you know, university lecturers are weird, full stop. But I got mine extracted. I could not deal with that. That's not really what I want to experience at all. And of course, it can create a reaction because it's a foreign thing in your body, and it can also cause infection. So you want them removed. But anyway, botflies are very prevalent. But as regards to elephants, African elephants, I don't have much information on that, I'm afraid. But I would guess yes. They aren't too common in South Africa. You do find them, but they aren't too common, especially in comparison to areas like the Amazon, where they're just everywhere. And the Amazonian experience, we were actually looked after by a group of shaman from the local villages, and at that point in my life, I was suffering from quite severe arachnophobia, and I think I'm over it now, but for whatever reason, I suffered from it. And I thought, I'm going to go to the Amazon. Why not? I'll get over my fear. So as I mentioned, what I used to wake up to on my net, but also above my sort of little sleeping area was this huge nest. And I thought, what is that nest? I don't know. Anyway, it was whip scorpion spiders that came out at night time and just scuttled around your mosquito net. The ones in South Africa, if you are South African, are really not that big. They're quite terrifying looking, whip scorpion spiders, if you ever want to Google them, but they're not that big. The ones in the Amazon are the size of a dinner plate. Above your net. And it got to the point where I thought, oh, we have to wash in one of the Amazonian tributaries, one of the sort of little water bodies that is right next to us. That's where we cleaned. And I thought, at least when I'm in the water, there are no spiders. I can relax, I can clean, I can enjoy the fresh water. Oh, but there are water spiders. Lots of them that glide on past you with their 8 legs. They have a unique swimming method, not too unlike an octopus, and yeah, you just can't escape them. It's... now that I'm older, I think it would be tough for me to do that experience again, but it was surreal. Going deep into the Amazon. I'm not talking about the periphery where you can do all these retreats and no, I'm talking about deep into the Amazon for a month. And it's wonderful to see that and sort of experience that. I'm not even sure if it's allowed these days, if it's a bit too risky. When I was a kid, we used to eat chewing gum from under the tables. We used to pick up things from the ground, climb trees, but nowadays everything's a little bit more wrapped in tissue paper. I've got more coming down to drink. Maybe Shukuru Dam is a winner after all. Okay, we are just going to reposition literally just up ahead. I am baking in the sun, everyone. And I cannot deal with that. Good morning, Darcy Miller. Good morning. I'm just going to carefully reposition. I thought I was strong and I thought I could handle it, but no, I'm burning up here. There we go. I'm just going to do some additional maneuvers and I should be able to put myself in the shade. Ah, that is much better. How is that for you, Rian? Good. Rian's good and he's also in the shade. And we're actually a little bit closer to the elephant, so it's a winner all round. Whew! To think I used to spend my younger years covered in oil lying in the sun. Oh, what was I thinking? The 90s were just the best, weren't they? People always ask, when's the best time to go on safari? And I think, as much as I appreciate that question, it's a really difficult one to actually answer. And I think if I had to choose, I would choose winter. It's cold, it is cold, my goodness, but the sightings are much more intense and much more sort of incredible in my opinion. When you come in summer, water is everywhere. The elephants will come to water holes, they will, but not as frequently unless you want to go for a swim. There are puddles and pans and wet vegetation and all sorts of things all around the reserve that we'll never even find in those thick blocks. Whereas in winter, that doesn't exist. So the elephants really have no choice but to come to water holes, but to come to sort of pans that are pumped. And it just creates a very, very different experience. Both seasons offer the most wonderful experiences, but I think if I had to personally choose, it would be winter. Hello, you. This one's just in front of our car, showing off. Just want all the attention, don't you? So I did do some research there, Harvey, just quickly, and I do believe that yes, African elephants do get botflies and they can actually die from it. It's not so much in the sub-Saharan Africa, it's more far north. More in sort of jungle areas, like you get the sort of huge rainforest in the Congo. So yes, in answer to your question, I do believe they do. Wow, to think that a botfly can kill an elephant, that's quite something. I will miss the insects in winter. I thoroughly enjoy getting into insects. I'm not an expert, I don't know everything, but I want to. I love it. I think they're just the best. And I'll miss their absence. It feels a little bit lonely when the insects are not around. I know not everyone's going to agree with me, but imagine a world without any insects at all. Wouldn't you feel lonely? And I often find, I say this a lot, but I often find if you talk to the animals, yes, it's easy to talk to elephants, it's easy to talk to your dog, but if you talk to the animals, especially the ones you're scared of, it actually makes a big difference. And it sounds so silly, and many of you will laugh, and that's okay. But I actually started talking to the spiders that I would find in Djuma, trying to sort of make peace with them, make friends with them, sort of. And saying it out loud makes a big difference. And then I found this quote. You know I love quotes. And I've read it to you before, but I'm going to again. It is by Chief Dan George. And the quote is, "One thing to remember is to talk to the animals. If you do, they will talk back to you. But if you don't, they won't talk back to you. Then you won't understand. And when you don't understand, you will fear. And when you fear, you will destroy. And if you destroy the animals, you will destroy yourself." Wow, it's quite hard-hitting. It's an amazing quote. It's one of my favorites. I save all of these things on my phone. But it's true. I went into great depth yesterday about coexistence. And part of that, I think we need to relate to animals that we struggle to relate to. Yes, the big five are lovely. Giraffe that we've got coming in here are lovely. All these wonderful animals are great, but what about the others? What about the ones that we do struggle to relate to? What about the ones we're scared of because they can harm us? What about the ones that have a terrible reputation like hyenas? Try talking to them. You do see a spider on your wall, okay, it's not ideal. Don't kill it. Get a cup and a piece of paper. It's such a great method. And if you're too scared to do it, I'm sure someone in your household will. But before you do that, just speak to it. Just say, "Hi, spider. What are you doing in my room? I appreciate that you eat all the flies for me." It's amazing the power of words. And I think the more we try to understand animals, the easier coexistence will become. So many people judge me for my love of hyenas. So many. I don't care. But the sort of reputation they have, they go, "Oh, you like hyenas? Why?" I'm like, why not? They're amazing. The most scariest thing in the world is the unknown. In my opinion. And I think if we just try to learn and read and research and feel about anything unknown, it makes a big difference. And especially with regards to the animal kingdom, when I was in Thailand, I met a lady that was absolutely petrified of rats. But I mean, really, like this fear was really severe. And she travels a lot, but she extensively researches the place and even contacts people from the place to see if there are any rats or if she'll see any rats. And even when you talk about them, you start seeing this reaction in her. It's very physical. And I feel sorry for her and I wanted to help her. I understand why people don't like rats, but also the phobia or the fear is completely irrational. And I wanted to say to her, maybe try and understand them. My friends had pet rats and they actually make incredible pets. I think she just needs to talk to them. I'm going to get blamed for all of you people going out and having conversations with the animals now. Wow, look at this. I haven't seen multiple giraffes all drink at once here. I hope they do. Ah, zebra too. Wow. Pretending to be a giraffe for the day. Oh no, there are more of you. They were completely in sync. I did not get that, I'm afraid, FC. It was very broken. If you could repeat. It is so nice to look at giraffe and zebra together. The elephants have actually completely disappeared. And I mean, that is 6 giraffes. And look at that little one on the right, trying to get it home. It just always looks like such a mission for giraffes. And I guess for a giraffe, maybe it's not a mission at all. Maybe it's easy, but it just always looks to us very awkward. And you would think they would just get that huge head rush and just fall over. Bending down is complicated, especially for an animal whose brain is miles away from the heart. I mean, the brain sits about 5 meters above the ground and about 2 meters away from the heart. And to sort of counteract that, when they do bend over, they obviously bend over very cautiously, but when they do, they have a network of really small capillaries that actually dilate, of course, and constrict to control the blood flow to the brain. So when they do bend over, they don't get that head rush. They don't get that whoosh, all sort of racing to the brain at once. And then again, when they stand up, racing downwards again. They also have really special valves in their neck that assist this whole process. They're highly specialized to be able to bend down. So although it looks really awkward, it probably isn't if you're a giraffe. It's probably very simple. It doesn't feel any different from us bending down or doing the downward dog. They're modified for their body shape. Of course, every animal has to be, but to us it just looks awkward. But to them, they're just a giraffe. They can handle it.
Wild Earth family, we need you to become a Wild Earth explorer so we can continue bringing the magic of nature to people all over the world who can't afford to pay. Everyone deserves the right to enjoy nature. Please help us make a difference by paying a small monthly amount. Join us in giving back to our planet by supporting this worthy cause. Let's forge a special connection between people and nature, inspiring conservation efforts worldwide.
What an amazing scene. Leanne, if you could just go to the right a little bit, I want to show everyone Ambush Alley. Ambush Alley is so beautiful. And it is where the brown, there you go, right in the middle now. Well, yes, right in the middle. It's one of my favorite places. Sadly, it's a complete black spot, but it's a black spot for everyone. The radios don't work there, no phones will work there. It just is what it is, and that's where the brown hyena den is. It doesn't take that long to get to either, but it's really beautiful over there. One day we'll figure out how to do it. Okay, I don't know what we're gonna do now actually. I don't know whether we're gonna stay and wait or we're gonna bumble on, but you guys are gonna head over to Amakhala.
One, Lauren, enjoy your bumbling on there. So we're not bumbling at all. We've managed to find some beautiful aloes over here. Just look at these ones. These are huge ones. Morgan, how many meters do you reckon? 2 meters? 2.5 meters? Let me just try to do the maths. Or maybe 1 meter? Maybe 3 meters, eh?
You said 1 meter.
Well, I was doing the math. So 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters.
Very good math.
my what do you call it? My distance perception is not very good. So I would say,
Stand next to it.
yeah, let's go stand right next to it so you can see exactly how tall these plants are. Very cool plants. So we'll stand next to this one, yeah. This one. Alrighty, we will do that. Look at this. So my height is about 100 and maybe 70 centimeters. So you can just see this is like a little bit more than double my height. So very, very interesting. And you can see how you have the main leaves at the top there, but all of these leaves have died off. But as you can see, it continues to go down the plant all the way to the bottom. So this becomes like a petticoat for the plant. It actually protects the main stem from maybe, wood-boring insects or, animals that like to eat the bark off of them. Very, very interesting, hey? And you look at these leaves, they are very spiny and sort of like corky, if you will. So I can imagine if an animal comes up here, this is not going to be very comfortable for them to be too close to it. Very interesting plant. Aloe ferox, known as a bitter aloe. We'll come back to the vehicle. Now the reason why these aloes are so big is because here in Carnarvondale, in this section of the game reserve, now it's still quite a big section, but there's no elephants out here, and so these plants are not being attacked at all by elephants, and so they just grow and grow and grow. Some of these aloes are actually taller than what this vehicle is, and that is incredible. So I don't know how old these are. So you often hear us talking about the Latin name of the plant. So Aloe ferox. Oh, Hilary, thank you. Yeah, I did a little bit of research before we went live now, so I do know a little bit about this plant, but there's still lots that I don't know. So I did a little bit of research while we were here, which we do sometimes. And so yeah, I got some nice little bits of information for you. But I was also just reading up that, you know, the Aloe ferox, and of course, you know, these scientific names, which you know, are Latin names, they do have a meaning. So the meaning of aloe derives from the Greek word for the dried juice of the aloe leaves, and that's from the aloe part. And then ferox basically refers to the fierce or warlike spiny-edged leaves. Aloe ferox. Now these are wonderful plants. If you enjoy watching birds, this is a great plant because all types of sunbirds are attracted to them, the mouse birds as well, even certain species of weavers, and also insects, and in return insect-eating birds. So if you have one of these trees or these plants growing in your garden, keep an eye on it because you are sure to see many birds and insects and insect-eating birds and so on. Very, very interesting. Now, as you know, a lot of the aloes are quite famous for their medicinal properties. I think it's the aloe vera, which is said to be one of the most medicinal plants on the planet, which can help for a lot of things. But I believe that certain cosmetics, the gel from the aloe is used in certain cosmetics. And then I believe it can also treat arthritis. And then can also help flush your system out. So almost like a detoxer. But I know in the sort of the 1820s, so roughly about 200 years ago, the English settlers who had cattle and so on and did farming in these areas, a lot of those cattle would pick up parasites and things like worms, which would live inside their bodies, which is not good for them. So actually to expel those worms, what the farmers used to do, they would either feed this in the mulch, which is basically they would take certain plants and crush it and mulch it and so on, so they could feed it to cattle as fodder. They would add some of these leaves from the bitter aloes in there just to help expel some of those parasites. And I also believe that also chicken farming, if you take some of these leaves and you put it into, you know, the water that the chickens are drinking, and they're going to drink that water, and then also helps them to expel those worms out of their stomachs. Yeah, and aloes are also very good for things like insect bites. So I mentioned earlier on that I got stung by a bee, and I put some of the aloe juices on that bee sting, and I think it helped because oh yeah, the next day I was fine. What's wrong, Morgan? Yeah, I did have some medication from one of the lodges as well. That probably also is a contribution to the help. But I like to think the aloe ferox sorted me out. But if you get burns on your body, you can also apply some of the gel to burns and insect bites and all sorts of things, and that can help with the healing properties. Let's listen to a few birds while we're here. It sounds like a somber greenbill. I think it's that one. Ah, brilliant. Ralph is out and about on the dam cams. He wants to say good morning to you all, so let's head on and greet Ralph.
Morning, everybody. Good day. Hello and welcome to Escape to Nature, where I'm coming to you live from the Okukuyu waterhole in the Etosha National Park of Namibia. I am starting a little bit later, but it seems like there's been quite a bit of action with the other locations. So better late than never, but it looks like it is a little bit of a grey day here in the Etosha National Park. Doesn't look like there's much wind though. But who knows, there might be a little bit of a splattering of rain a little bit later. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and I'm happy to have you aboard. And as always, this is a live and interactive experience, so please jump on board with us. Send us through your questions and your comments. You can register on the Wild Earth website. You can download the app. And also, please don't forget to subscribe on the YouTube channel. This is indeed the last show for Escape to Nature for the near future. I'm sure it will be back at some stage. But please hang around, enjoy the morning with us. And it seems like the animals are starting to come down for a drink now. As per usual, this time of the day, it starts heating up quite substantively in Etosha, and this is when the animals come down to drink. It was pretty quiet earlier on, but now we start to see, as per usual, the animals coming down later on. And here we see quite a lot of zebra, a lovely mix of game. There's always some zebra, blue wildebeest, oryx, springbok, and it just depends on the numbers and how many actually do come down. So what is it that you'd like for us to discuss today or to look for? Well, I'm stationary here at the waterholes, but I do have the opportunity of panning around and seeing what is hiding in the immediate surroundings. And you always notice the animals are rather skittish when they come down to the water here, because they do get taken out by the Umbika pride of lions that frequents this area. They seem to generally spend more time down in the south after the big rains, and then as it starts drying out, which it's doing now, they then generally do start moving up a little bit more here towards the Okukuyu waterhole. So there's always a chance of us seeing them, but who knows. And something of interest, I know we are here in Namibia in the Etosha National Park, but I will be going on over to the Djuma Dam Cam as well. So I'm fully on waterhole watch. We'll go down into the Sabi Sands, which is in the Greater Kruger National Park of South Africa. But here in South Africa, we are celebrating the long weekend as a result of Freedom Day, when we had our first democratic elections on the 27th of April, 1994. And with that in mind, I do have to say a very big congratulations to our South African world-class sailing star, Kirsten Neuschaffer, on winning the prestigious and demanding Golden Globe race, in which she spent nearly 235 days in an event that required competitors to sail without GPS and other technology. Kirsten was the only female entrant and became the first woman to win a solo round-the-world race. On her journey, she also rescued a Finnish sailor whose boat had sunk in South Korea on top on Freedom Day. So we're very proud of you, Kirsten. And if you have never heard of her, well, you're going to hear lots about her from now on, because she's just shaken up the world. Well done. That is amazing. So that's one new famous person. But in a minute, I'm going to just do a little bit of a chat on some of the famous Namibian people that you may never have heard of. Maybe, maybe not. You'll have to wait and see. As always, we do see the zebras prefer the opposite bank drinking here, and they very often make this sort of half circle type formation. And I think it's just particular to the zebras. They come in a real uniform type setup. The springbok are a little bit more haphazard. The oryx, they like to walk right into the middle. And in the blue wildebeest, they come also a bit more sporadic in fits and starts, little groups as they come in. And the impala like this left-hand side as well as the springbok. The animals coming through in their droves now. Love that sound of water as well as they're going in to get a little bit away from the edge of the water where the hooves and all the walking has kicked up the mud and making the water probably a little bit more distasteful. So going into the middle, getting the fresher water. So there were quite a few clouds around earlier on, but now it just seems to have a little bit of a grey color to it. I think there's probably a bit of high-lying clouds. I definitely don't think it's going to be raining anytime soon. Who knows? It's not really the season for rain, but you can have a little bit of a splattering here and there. The major rains would normally have passed by now. And so that's the reason why the animals are starting to concentrate around the waterholes, because it's beginning to dry up. And as the months progress, it's going to just be getting drier and drier heading into the winter months. And so that's when the real spectacular concentrations of animals around all the permanent waterholes start to happen. And that's why I know Lauren was talking about the best times to go on safari. Well, it all depends on what you want to go for. In the rainy season or in the dry season, different parameters are going to influence how many animals are where. So my answer to guests that ask when is the best time to go on safari, well, it normally depends. Do you want to see big concentrations of animals next to waterholes, lots of predators, etc., which is the general answer. So that for me then in the dry season. Typically in our safari regions or our typical safari regions in South Africa, Namibia, it's a real summer rainfall. So, and that also comes side to side with the heat. So it can be quite uncomfortable. There can be lots of insects around, mozzies, etc. But during the rainy season, we have an explosion of botanical life, as well as all the migratory birds. So it is beautiful for landscapes, for birding, and for botany. Whereas in winter, it's a lot colder, it's much drier. So you have the concentrations of game next to waterholes, but and you also have humidity from predators because of the lower temperatures. So much better in that sense, and the majority of people do like to come in the dry season, in the winter months, hence the high season sort of being around July to November before the big rains return. But generally people that have been on safari many, many times and then want to come and see something different, well, then it's those summer months in the rainy season with an explosion of plant life as well as all the migratory birds. So it's whatever tickles your fancy. Now, I was speaking about, do you know any famous Namibians? Well, I'll give you a couple, maybe one or two more than a couple. Do you know Michelle McLean? She was Miss Universe in 1992, and she hails from Windhoek in Namibia. That's one famous one. If you know anything about the Springboks and our World Cup winning Springbok team in 2007, well, a very big part of that was Percy Montgomery, and he hails from Walvis Bay, and he's actually a very good friend of some of my very good friends who went to school with him, both in Walvis Bay and then also in Sax in Cape Town. So Percy Montgomery, yes, a very known South African, if you will. He was adopted South African, but he hails from Walvis Bay. Then, I don't know if any of you know of a sprinting legend. He was the perennial runner-up at the Olympics, called Frankie Fredericks. He would always get silver. He was always very close to winning gold, but he was the perennial silver man. And shame, he could just never win it. And we always cheered him on, but he got 3 silvers at the Olympics, different Olympics. Yeah, 100-meter sprints. Frankie Fredericks. Do you know of any others? I know there's a boxer or 2, but send them in if you can tell me any other famous Namibians. They may have previously been in what was the 5th province of South Africa, the Southwestern Districts. But if they were born anywhere there, they are now obviously Namibians. I'm not quite sure these animals up now, but as per usual, it's probably 9 to 9.5 times out of 10 that it's a false alarm. It's very often just a bird that flits past. One of them gets a fright, and then they all just follow. It's that copycat behavior that is also very important for anti-predator behavior. If you copy the ones that are running away, you'll most likely get away from a predator. So even though most of the time it's false alarm, it's still a very important behavior to follow other animals that are running. And I love that story about winning that across the globe sailing competition, because I'm an expedition man myself and expedition leader. So I did and led many expeditions across Namibia mainly, but also down in the Cederberg near to Cape Town. But having led the British Fire Brigade and many other groups and taking charge of them, it's something that is very close to my heart. People that go out on expeditions, I just find expeditions absolutely fascinating, whether it's going off to the Antarctic, sailing across the globe, trekking across the desert, which is my speciality. I think it's really soul-searching and soul-food kind of stuff. It really just puts you out in the elements, and when you've got people under your responsibility as well, it just makes it even more of a challenge. And I think you really find the real worth of peace on these kinds of expeditions. I also led expedition in Lesotho in the Tsehlanyani National Park. I just love the whole idea of having big trucks, lots of equipment, camping gear, all the resources that you require to survive, food, water, everything in terms of first aid, and planning the expedition, delivering it, making sure that everyone is safe, and just all the fun in between. It's always incredible. Thinning out a little bit, but still quite a few animals here, and we can just expect more and more to be coming down as the day progresses. Tina, yeah, I think it's the best time of day to be next to particularly this waterhole. Well, it's I can't say the best time of day. I think maybe a little bit later on towards sunset is my best time of the day here, because you have the sun setting directly opposite this waterhole, and you have the reflections that come with it, and then some of the nocturnal animals are out and about as well. But generally, it's the time of day when the rhythmical cycle, a lot of these animals do come down to drink. So we have the real concentrations, and this time of year in particular, as it starts drying up, there's more and more animals that come down at the same time. So it does make for beautiful watching and all sorts of interesting interactions between the different animals as well, from the zebra, blue wildebeest, springbok, black-faced impala. It's just wonderful. And the oryx, of course, my favorite of all the antelope. When there's little to no wind, it does make for fascinating photography as well, because you can imagine the reflections, especially of zebra, who I find are probably the most photogenic of all the animals, particularly so at water when you get very clear reflections. However, there's a little bit of wind now, so it's just blurring that reflection, but I've got some photographs of this exact waterhole with zebra drinking where there's not a breath of wind, and so you have a real mirror effect, and it looks like there's double the amount of zebra than there are. See those crows and ravens in the background too, coming down for a drink as well. Highly intelligent birds. And I saw Andrew was talking about the aloe ferox. That's one of my favorite plants because I am quite susceptible to sunburn, particularly on my schnoz, which is over the years turned a rather strange shade of pink because I've peeled the skin off of it so many times. But sunburn and aloe ferox, for me, that is the perfect plant to not only stop you from getting sunburned, but when you are sunburned, to treat it. And I used to just cut off a little piece, and it's got like this slimy goo that comes out of the leaf itself, and just wipe that on the nose. It is instantaneous, the relief that is gained. And just down from where I live in Port Alfred, down along the garden route, there's a massive farm, ferox, and all sorts of products that they create and produce as a result of this farm and the processing of the aloe ferox, but all natural. And yeah, as Andrew was saying, a lot of compounds very similar to the aloe vera, but on a local level, and obviously then does treat local ailments. And speaking of local ailments and treatments thereof, it's always spoken of that honey is one of the best antibiotics, antiseptics, etc. And so honey can be used in the treatment of flu virus. It can help you just bolster your defenses and your immunity. But they say it's very important to obtain honey from your immediate environment, from your area, from your region, because those bees will have been creating the honey with all the local bacteria and viruses, etc., within that honey, and being able to protect against that. So if you want to use honey for any kind of medical reasons or to bolster your immunity, get it from your local honey or bee farmers, because that's when it's really going to work, not from somewhere out of your area, because it will have all the compounds that might not be prevalent in your particular zone. So it's just a nice little health tip. If you're going to get yourself some honey, get it from your local farmer. And it's also good to support your local farmers and not import it from other areas. Anyway, with that little tidbit, let's, I think, head on us over to the other waterhole that I'm watching at Djuma.
We hope that when you watch Wild Earth, you will fall in love with nature. We know that our explorers share a passion for nature and want to make a difference. Wild Earth Schools is back. Sign up to be an explorer and your subscription will help us reach the future conservationists of our planet. Invest in something that truly matters, encouraging children to care for our beautiful wild earth. Wild Earth Explorers, make a difference.
So a nice big male, that lovely set of horns on him, and obviously very, very good genetics that would be now hopefully passed on through to the next generation. I'm pretty sure the hippos are still present in the waterhole. It seems like Dewey, a female, and potentially 2 or 3 youngsters. But nice just to watch a bit on these waterbuck as well. A couple of days ago, we had a lovely sighting of ground hornbills, southern ground hornbills. I haven't seen them for the last couple of days now. They also like to walk around here where these waterbuck are moving. Well, this male now resting up a bit. Constantly listening out, constantly smelling and looking, using all the senses. So there it's also pretty overcast, cloudy, windy. It's not the ideal conditions, but with it being potentially a bit cooler, you never know what we might see moving predator-wise. It does make it a bit more comfortable for them. So there's every chance we might see some spots. Who knows? And if you wonder why I just keep moving the camera around, it's, obviously we don't have the peripheral vision that we would have if we're actually there to look around, to concentrated in one spot. You can very easily miss quite a bit. And we've got quite a bit of leeway here on the Juma there too. and it's all pretty much in one direction. But here at Djuma, we can shift it around. We've probably got, a bit more than 200 degrees, maybe even 250, that we can explore a bit with. So we do tend to move around quite a bit more here. And we notice all sorts of small things, from squirrels to the southern ground hornbills, as well as the parrots, which are nesting in a tree. And then, in and around the water, we've got the terrapins and the monitor lizards, etc. So there's lots to look for. Hence why there's slightly more movement in this spot. But as the wind does pick up as well, there's a bit of a wobble on it. But that's just when the wind is quite excessive. It does look like it might be. Now you can hear the hippos calling in the background. One of the coolest calls in the African bush. African fish eagle roaring, elephants calling, jackals. All some of my favorite calls. Elephants trumpeting. Hippos definitely have to be in and amongst them. See, it looks like some brown-veined white butterflies getting blown across. Pamela, so your number one being the hippo call. Yeah, it is pretty cool, hey. I often say that they're jokers, are the hippos. They go on, they tell each other jokes, and then they come up laughing. So whenever they call, I often say to my guests, that must have been a good one. Although I've said it a few times, so maybe it's getting a bit old. Nevertheless, there's always somebody that hears it for the first time. So well, speaking of hippos, let's head on over and see if we can spot them. What do we got? Generally, when it's quite windy like this, the animals are rather skittish. So there can be a bit of nervousness amongst them, and that often does lead them not to be too happy, just relaxing next to the water. They tend to go to their safe places. They head to the water just for a quick drink and then move off. And when it's really windy, you can often find that the hippos spend a lot of time underwater, where they're not exposed to the wind. So they just come up, take their breath, and down they go. Difficult with the birds tend to not call as much when it's very windy as well. It's a little bit of a waste of energy. So like was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. It was pretty quiet like this, and suddenly there was just an elephant that appeared. So you just got to keep watching, because that can always happen. Buffalo herd could appear, elephant herd. If we're lucky, maybe a lion or a leopard comes down for a drink. It's the luck of the draw, I always say, and that's pretty much going out on safari game drive. Unless you're literally following and tracking an animal, it's the luck of the draw. you're literally passing through an area and you're seeing whatever's in front of you at that particular time. But as soon as you've passed there, anything could step across the road right behind you and you would have missed it. So it just depends on the exact timing that you actually move through a particular zone, in terms of what you're going to find. And in French, I always used to tell my guests, c'est la bonne chance. It's just the law. But as I say, the more experience you have with guiding, you know where the animals like to hang out. So you go and move in those areas looking for, particular animals. But if you're just going on a general game drive, as I say, it's really down to luck of the draw. But like our very famous golf player, Gary Player, said, the more you practice, you get. The more you put yourself out there, you'll get. The more you practice your drives and in particular areas, start to realize the animals like to move on particular seasons, particular time of the day, then you start to get a lot in the animals that you find. And you're not going to catch a fish without a line in the water. So you got to keep looking. Have your binos out. Keep on checking, scanning. Sometimes the animal. So very often when it's not extremely windy, you can have a lot of birds of prey utilizing these nice dead trees. You can even have African fish eagles, martial eagle, and all sorts of storks, etc. But you can expect when it's windy like this, they will prefer to go onto a tree that's got a bit more cover and foliage. So you can expect, it's not always like that, but generally lots of wind equals not too many exposed birds, because it does affect them quite heavily and they have to spend then quite a lot of energy just holding on to a branch. I like these kind of days for walks. I don't like when it's too windy, because just like the animals, it does hamper your hearing ability. And the animals are quite a lot more skittish. So if you do get into a close encounter with something big and hairy, his response might be a little bit more aggressive on these days because of the wind. But when it's nice and cool, obviously you can imagine that it is nicer to walk. Very often we would partake in taking guests out on trails after the morning activity. So it's sort of a little bit later on in the day when it can generally be quite hot. So a day like this might be a much nicer day to get out on foot, bar the wind. So I would say crocodiles are not very common in Djuma. These pans are quite seasonal and they're not permanently there. So there can be crocodiles that are seen in these waterholes per se. But the crocodiles do prefer the more permanent waterholes and rivers, where it doesn't dry up And so, in that time, then it's quite stressful on the crocodiles because they would have to move, and they do then expose themselves to predation from hyenas, lions, leopards when they're moving between a dried up water point and somewhere else. And anywhere walking out on land is potential for being eaten if you're a crocodile. So yeah, they are seen in these seasonal pans, but they tend to stick to the more permanent water courses and water holes, which these aren't. So I think there has been sightings of them here. I've never seen crocodiles in the Djuma waterhole, but I'm pretty sure that there have been there, but it's not very common. So everything else pretty quiet. Just back to our lovebirds, the waterbuck. So I think it's a little bit quiet game-wise here at Djuma. There's quite a lot of wind. So I think let's maybe head on back to Okukuyu, where it's a lot sunnier, there's not so much wind, and there's lots more animals. Oopsie, I've now clicked on the top of the screen. So it's now taken us up on the view of the sky. But at least there you can see that it's not as cloudy and angry as it is in Djuma. And the potential for rain here is a lot less. So just with the sheer abundance of animals, the Makwa sandgrouse calling, beep, 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 beep. Wow, there's quite a few oryx. And a little bit of chitter chatter that you got here, there. That is tourists, guests that are coming down to the waterhole, also just to see. The camera is just above the viewpoint, so you can often hear people just speaking there. Darcy Miller, Marlies van Vuren, being a conservationist from Namibia. I haven't heard of her, Darcy, but I am going to have a look now. There's quite a number of famous people that have come from Namibia, but you need to obviously search in the particular realms. Marlies van Vuren. I'm going to check that out. From Nankuse. Okay. So Nankuse is a wildlife sanctuary in central Namibia. I think it's near to not Gobabis. Yeah, it might be Gobabis. but it's in the True Kalahari there. And I know a lot about Nankuse, but I didn't know anything about Marlies van Vuren. So thanks for that, Darcy Miller. I'm going to check it out. You know, I'm quite heavily involved with Africat and Okonjima in the central part as well. But I have also taken guests to Nankuse, and it's a lovely reserve, as well as they do a lot of very important conservation in that central part of Namibia, which is mostly reserved for cattle ranching, and so you can understand there's a big human wildlife conflict, particularly with predators from leopards and cheetah and hyenas. There's not really any lions left in the central part of Namibia. They're more restricted to the national parks. But there's still a massive wild free roaming population of leopards and cheetah. They cross the different farms, but if they get picked up by the farmers, obviously there's conflict because of their livelihoods, depending on their livestock and their cattle and their sheep, etc. So there's big conflict there, and there's at least there's the places like Nankuse and Africat that then offer sanctuaries to where these farmers pick up on these predators. They have an option now of not just killing the predators, which would really affect their livelihoods. They can phone on the likes of Nankuse and Africat, and then they can come and trap that animal and take it to their sanctuary, where they then usually collar the animals, and they do get alarms when they exit the reserve so that they can go and bring them back. So it's important when you do see, you know, I've had a lot of guests who do ask and also complain about seeing wildlife with collars on. For me, it's going to be imperative going forward, especially when you've got big populations of predators in free roaming areas where there's potential for human wildlife conflict, for them to have collars. It would be nice if later we can just give them an implant that could then, you know, indicate if they've left the property or not, or gone into an area where there is potential conflict, so that they can be removed and brought back to a safe sanctuary for them once again. But for now, it's very expensive, and it's all about the batteries, which don't last very long on these small little implants, etc. So it's important for them to have those collars from a conservation perspective, and for the survival of the species in those areas. So I think it's a small sacrifice. It doesn't make great photos, but wow, I mean, you're not getting a great photo, but it's helping the greater conservation of the species. So I'd say go the collar. You'll see that in Madikwe as well. I think they've probably got those collars on because there is also a high prevalence of lions on Madikwe. Yes, there's obviously research conducted in their movements between the different prides, where they, you know, and what they feed on, etc., and where they drink and whatnot, and then obviously the kind of impact that they have on their prey and what they're feeding on. But it's also essential for them to know if one of those animals escapes the park. That's when liability kicks in, and anybody gets injured or, you know, hurt, killed, or any animals on the neighboring farms get eaten, etc. There's a liability there. So the authorities within the park that are protecting those animals that they've got collars on want to know when those animals have left, and it happens a lot. So, and when they do leave, where they've gone, because they want to get them as quickly as possible and return them. So important for animals. There is that potential for human-wildlife conflict, especially when there is encroachment right onto the boundaries of the particular reserve that you may find them in. So it's all very well saying that we should just take their collars off, but it depends what the conservation and management team is trying to achieve, and sometimes it's imperative to have those collars on. Here in Etosha, you won't really see any animals with collars on because here it's such a massive reserve, and the animals are actually able to move in and out of the park. Because it's not an impenetrable barrier that they do have up. It's a wire fence. It's not electrified. And I've seen the elephants just walk it down. They literally just put their foot on it in one of the areas where there's not a post, but they can have 20 to 30 meters between these posts, and they literally just stand the wire down, walk over it, and then it bounces back up behind them. So even the elephants can move, and they do, as I have witnessed for myself. So the western side of Etosha is probably one of my favorite areas because it sort of borders on in between Damara land and Kaka land, and that real northwestern wilderness of Namibia. But it's not quite into the Skeleton Coast yet. It's very much like the environment that you have here in Etosha, but without the pan. It's really much like an arid savanna, and so you've got a lot of animals, lots of predators, lots of elephants, and you get the mixing between these Etosha elephants and the desert elephants as well, which for me is fascinating and probably the most intriguing population of any kind of animal I've ever been around anywhere in the world. And that's why I really enjoy tracking and following desert elephants. It's for me just something out of this world. Anyway, speaking of elephants in particular, let's head you off to Lauren.
We tried to follow up on a lioness. We saw her, but she was on a mission right into a thick block. Don't know what she was up to, but she was very busy. So we have decided to come back to Shikudu Dam. And it's still just as busy. Elephant, zebra, and giraffe. Is it the same herds? I think it's the same giraffes, but I couldn't possibly say for sure. Just like Lowdown, it's so lovely seeing multiple species all at once, just coming together for the sort of greater purpose that is water. I see that female Rian, 12 o'clock at the water's edge, the big one. If you just look at her genitalia, I don't quite know what has happened here. It's definitely a female, but I've seen her before. I've definitely seen her before. You can see her mammary gland, you can see her body shape. It's definitely a female. I know it looks slightly bizarre, but there's obviously something wrong there. Her mammary glands are very full. She doesn't look pregnant from this angle, but it's a little bit tricky to see. Normally it's easy to see if an elephant's pregnant from front on. I'm starting to actually get to know some individual elephants around Madikwe, and it's wonderful. Really, really wonderful.
Towards the end of May, I'm going to be heading back to Djuma, which is one of my favourite places. Now, as many of you know, we need a little help keeping our operations going. For those of you who donate $100 or more, I'll take you on a private safari. It won't be entirely private, there may be 20 or so of you there, but you'll still be able to answer any questions that you might have. We'll visit all the places that you want to, and we'll look for all the characters that you'd like to see.
Those giraffes seem to be so interested in the ellies. I would be too. Fascinating. What are these creatures doing? Elephants are always doing something. We're going to continue to sit here and watch every moment, but for now we're going to send you guys over to Djuma.
Well, it looks like at least we've got a little bit of something different at the Djuma Waterhole. It is indeed our hippos. So just showing themselves a little bit out of the water. So we heard them earlier. Now we can see one at least. I wonder if this is Dewey. Looks more like a female. Very lazy, snoozy hippopotamus. Looking at that, I'm even getting snoozy myself. But it's probably been a long night last night, out walking and grazing, and it's a tough life being a hippo. And they generally do cover a lot of ground overnight, so you can understand why they might be tired during the day. And that's why they sleep a lot. So would you say that hippos are nocturnal? I would say so. Generally so. Depends on the weather conditions, however. If they didn't manage to get or enough feeding during the night, and it's a nice overcast day like today, you might find them out grazing on a day like this as well. But it all depends on how much energy they took in last night. So it seems they took in enough, so it doesn't look like they're going to be exiting anytime soon. Anytime snooze now. Highly intelligent. Also, like the other animals, also always listen maybe around, but they do have the relative comfort of being in the water, and so the predators generally don't go and try and take them out in there. So, Crystal, the buoyancy of hippos is quite similar to what we have when we go in the water. It depends on how much air you have in your lungs in terms of how buoyant they're going to be. Obviously, the very nature of water will make them more buoyant than and lighter than they would be if they were out on land. But you can pretty much bet that this one is literally lying on the bottom. So it's not just floating around, it is sitting on the bottom of the soil at the bottom of this pan. Come on, give us a yawn. No. It's taking in some air. And so there you can see the body isn't moving up and down, it's just the head, which is now obviously this hippo has taken in some air, and now it can rest its head a little bit in the water. They can hold their breath for quite a time, but it will have to lift its head up again to take in some more air. Being an oxygen-breathing mammal, it has a high requirement, but it can hold its breath for quite a considerable amount of time. But there you see, head got to come up, nostrils open, exhales, inhales, and then it might go down again. There we are. You very often also see when they're just poking out of the water like that, terrapins might use them as a resting spot, and they also do feed on the hippos directly sometimes as well when they've got open wounds. Terrapins are omnivorous, and they're actually quite established hunters as well. They feed on vegetation as well, but they will feed on the hippos too, as well as the oxpeckers that do very often sit on them as well, and particularly so when they've got open wounds, normally as a result of fighting with other hippos. With those big tusks, they bite each other, and you can see sometimes very big scrape marks on their body. Looks like this one is now moving a little bit, probably just walking along the bottom, which is generally how they swim as well. They drop to the bottom, they run, and then they push up again. Maxine, it does depend what feeding areas they have adjacent to the particular waterhole that they are staying in. However, I do believe that they prefer larger water bodies where they can go completely under the water. And I've noticed that because you can see in the different areas where you do get higher concentrations of hippos, the more territorial or more aggressive or more successful bulls, they do take on bigger ponds within a river, and bigger water holes when there's good resources in the immediate surroundings. So it seems like the average leans towards them preferring bigger water holes, in my experience. And so in that instance as well, they can then have more females within that particular water body, as well as youngsters, etc. So it does seem to suggest that they do prefer bigger water bodies, because then that's where they are more successful. But it all depends on the resources that's available to them. So let's just have a look and see what else is around. As I say, you never know what you're missing when you're concentrating on one spot. It's always important just to look at the periphery and see what else is around. Yeah, Shelley B, I'm glad that you feel the same. It's a lovely Sunday, lazy Sunday. Are we afternoon yet? Not quite, almost. So in the last few days, I've been giving the sort of the saying of the day. A couple of days ago, it was be the swimming springbok. Yesterday, it was be the 1 + 1 = 1 organism, and the spirit of Ubuntu. And I think today, on a lazy Sunday, be the snoozy hippo. Do what you have to, but then don't forget to get the very important part of your life, and that is some good rest. A little bit of sun poking through here and there. I often look there on that right corner, just behind this tamboti, because that's where the terrapins do like to sun themselves. And when the water was a bit lower, we saw it quite a lot more, because there's a lot of sticks in that particular corner, and they seem to like it. I think the wind might also sort of push them towards that corner, but it's a nice spot for them to get out of the water and get their very necessary requirement of heat from the sun on their solar panels, and get the energy requirements so that they can go off and forage. And always looking in that zone down the Milwati ravine, because I often do see movement there. There can be predators. Now that's the spot that the terrapins do like coming out on that particular log. Doesn't look like there's any there now. Maybe it's as a result of there not being so much at the moment. Maybe the terrapins are just relaxing off somewhere else. But you would think on a cool day like this, there probably won't be too much activity from the reptiles. the hotter the better, really. And when it is very hot, those are the days that you can expect to see tortoises, terrapins, snakes, everything all out and active. Those lovely hot days. That's when you see lots of snake tracks on the roads. And the pythons and the puff adders coming out to sun themselves. So you've got to be careful when it is very hot not to drive over any of them, which would be terrible. A very moody sky that we've got. It really does make you think that there could be some rain at some stage. Down in the Eastern Cape, there is some rain about. So it very often does go up the east coast and then head into that low-veld region. So I think it might be part of the same system. So a nice moody atmosphere here. Snoozy hippos, no terrapins about. And I think it's all down to the current conditions. But where the conditions aren't as grey and it seems it's quite a lot hotter is out there in Madikwe.
Our elephants are just having the best time. There is no other way to describe this. It's just... oh, they just love it. And I want to say they're having a whale of a time, but of course that's not correct. It's actually really incorrect. Cetaceans, which includes dolphins and whales, when you want to sort of collectively talk about them, they're called cetaceans. And they've actually evolved to become the most dominant group of marine mammals, with the highest level of not only taxonomic but also ecological diversity. It's a huge group, and their closest living relatives are the hippos. So it would be correct for Ralph to say this hippo is having a whale of a time, but sadly not elephants. The divergence of pachyderms and cetaceans was a long time ago, and they're no longer sort of remotely connected. But the manatees, on the other hand, the African manatee, which is on my bucket list, is closely related to elephants. So maybe they're having a manatee of a time. Have you seen a manatee, Rian?
No.
Absolutely on my bucket list. Manatees and dugong. It's actually the group called the Sirenians that are closely linked to elephants, not the cetaceans. I don't know why we say they're having a whale of a time. I wonder where that expression comes from. Because if I was to really think about it, I think the expression would be so much more suited. They're having an elephant of a time. Because they just look like they're having such an elephant of a time over there. And Lahana, yes, is very sweet. They just love to throw that trunk around. They're having the best time. They're safe, surrounded by adults. It's fun, it's play. Get rid of energy, swing your trunk. Feels good. And they know they're safe if anything happens to them. There are a lot of bodyguards there. . you know this is her last day of E2N. But it is also, this afternoon, our final of Quizmania. So the first 2 hours of the Sunset Safari, which actually starts very soon when you think about it, will be the Quizmania final, which is very exciting. So stay tuned. Who will be crowned the winners? And you know what I love about this scene is, yes, as Alana said, the youngsters are cute throwing their trunks around, but what I love is just not really the youngsters, because youngster in any organism, I think, will play and have fun, and you know, they're learning from leopard cubs to impala lambs to, it's difficult to relate to insects, but even juvenile fish. I just love watching the adults, because the adults are clearly also having so much fun. They maybe don't throw themselves around quite as much as the youngsters, but they're still clearly loving every second of this. They're right in there, they're stuck in mud, they're covering themselves in mud, they're splishing and splashing and just having the best time. That's what I love about scenes like this, that the adults can just enjoy it too. Like WrestleMania over there. There's so many different age groups here as well, from the really young calves to the sort of slightly older, then the teenagers and the adults. This is ridiculous. You know, the other day I wrote this down for you. Due to its complexity, play is considered as an activity almost exclusive to mammals. What? It's so inaccurate. have to really be careful when you read things. Not everything you read, unless it's scientifically backed up, is accurate. But this is a whole lot of playing. You're reading a lot of textbooks. Play is to grow the muscles and to develop skills and coordination. I think they're the secondary benefits of play. I think play is to have fun. Then, within that, you learn to coordinate, you learn to sort of practice skills, your muscles develop. But I don't think it's the other way around. I don't know what you guys think. I don't think animals play to develop their muscles, and I think that's quite incorrect to teach people like that. I honestly think animals play to have fun, just like children. Then, of course, they'll develop skills through play and spatial awareness and all sorts of things, but they're not playing to do that. They're playing to have fun. And it's very difficult to study in science because it's unpredictable. It's also very dynamic. And it's sort of more related to the internal state of the organisms playing, if you think about it. It's very difficult to study. And that's why I think a lot of scientists like to have a definition. Yes, animals play to develop their muscles. Really? And it's funny, there is actually 5 criteria that I can read to you that sort of considers play. But I will come back to that in just a moment.
Hi, Wild Earth lovers. I'm Holly. I'm from Rochester, New York, and I'm a wildlife explorer. I'm also the proud and ecstatic recipient of a 3-night stay at Matswiri Safari Lodge in the Decoy Game Reserve. So Wild Earth, I want to thank you for being there. I want to thank you for this wonderful prize, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you shortly.
Sign up today and you could be the one experiencing it yourself.
The elephants are leaving, but let me just wrap up on that play thought. See what you guys think of it. So there's 5 criteria to figure out if behavior is really play. First, Does the behavior serve no purpose? Second, is it intrinsically rewarding? As in, does it happen without rewards like food? You know, the old sort of psychology experiments where you reward a dog for food, so it has to happen without rewards, internal reward. Third, is it different to other behaviors that are done for a specific reason? For example, foraging or searching for mates, etc. Fourth, is it repeated and not just a one-off? 5, is it initiated when the individual is relaxed? If all these conditions are met, a behavior is considered to be play. Oh, I just don't know. I guess in science you do need to quantify things. You can't just look at something and say, ah, this is play. This male impala ram right now is playing. No, he's not playing. He's drinking. A necessity of life. Needs water. It needs hydration. He's come to the water hole. He's drinking. So I guess there does need to be criteria in order to quantify something that does make sense. But I also just think play is play. And sometimes it's just really obvious, at least in the mammal world and potentially the bird world, that an animal is playing. Maybe it gets a little bit tricky when you start to dive into fish, or when you start to dive into reptiles, amphibians, insects, for sure. But that is the 5 criteria to be able to say an animal is playing. But it's been proven across the board now. It's not just mammals. It's not just mammals and birds. No way. It's been proven so many times. Octopus play, they're mollusks. Fish play. They really play. The examples of fish are wonderful. Manta rays play. Turtles play, they're reptiles. It's definitely not limited to mammals. I can't believe that is actually published. Yes, you've scared everyone, Impala. You're so ferocious and so pumped with testosterone right now. Everyone has left. The thicker necks, the thicker bodies. The males are changing so much. It's wonderful to see. The rutting season always just sneaks up on you. You sort of forget about it and then you think, ah, it's here again. Pretty sure just a few months ago the ewes were dropping the lambs. And they were. But it just, life passes you by. It goes so quickly. Especially in the bush. It's probably not with any other male impalas because they've all deserted them because they're now all fighting and being territorial. I didn't get that, I'm afraid, FC. Oh, what a pretty boy. Are you getting that, Rian? I'm just not getting that key part. Gracie's asking something about male impalas with regards to female impalas during rutting season, but there's a chunk of that question I'm just not getting. Comms are not very good. And the elephants are back. Well, they're not back. They're here. Sorry, this is a different herd. Look how dry they are. The poor ram's like, I'm out of here. I wonder if they'll go straight to the muddy pit and also have a sort of mud wallowing party. Sorry, Gracie, you're saying aggressive. I just wasn't getting that one part of your question. They become more aggressive in general. We are looking at elephants right now, so it's a bit strange to be talking about impala, but I will wrap up that question for you. They do become more aggressive in general. It's more to the males though. And the males will fight they can actually kill each other. You'll find dead impalas during the rutting season because they've just gotten out of condition, not paid attention, and the horns, they can die. So they will become more aggressive, but not necessarily towards the females. It's the females that they want to mate with. So they will start sheepdog herding them. So they will start sort of becoming very possessive with them, very sort of territorial over them, and herd them into groups, which is actually necessary for them to stimulate or come into estrus, Gracie. But I wouldn't say they're really more aggressive towards the females. Just aggressive behavior in general, I would say. Definitely towards other males. I hope that answered your question, Gracie. Fiona, you could watch mud bathing elephants all day in Majikwe. Me too. There's just been elephants and elephants and elephants and elephants since I've come back. We've had some other wonderful sightings, but some great elephant sightings. I mean, look at this. How could you ever get bored of it? There's not even a point in me talking over most of this. I just want you guys to enjoy it. Darcy Miller, it's amazing to get some feedback. Thank you, thank you. And you also believe they do things just for fun? Absolutely. And when you say animals, I hope you're like me and you agree all animals. It's okay, I've maybe never seen ladybugs having fun or spiders dancing, but they will do something, no matter how small it is in our eyes, that is for fun, for pleasure. Okay, they don't go to bars and get drunk and do the things that humans do, of course. Humans take things to every extreme, but they absolutely will. I really believe that. And it's really obvious in elephants, like they are having the best time, and it's so obvious because we're mammals and we can relate to them quite easily. So in other organisms it might not be so obvious, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Push through that illusion, everyone. Don't be limited by your own illusion. I'm just gonna have some water. Apologies, everyone. tantrums. This calf is getting what it wants, suckling. It's just so wonderful. Precious moments you don't always get to see. Oh, this has been such a wonderful escape to nature, especially for the last one. Where else would you rather be than just watching Ellies have the time of their life having fun? They don't spend too long here. They go on about their day. If they go north, there'll be more dams that they can head to there. In every direction, actually. And they will know exactly where to find them. Everyone for being a part of the Escape to Nature journey. It's been a wonderful journey, although we're taking a break for now. It's always good to have discussions with you and chat to you. Hear your thoughts and your opinions. See if you agree or disagree. You never, ever have to just agree. Especially when it comes to the animal kingdom, things are a lot more complex. And on that note, thank you everyone. It really has been a pleasure, especially today's drive. But for now, we are going to send you back over to Andrew, who has some giraffe.
So myself and Morgan, we've been driving on the ridge and we've come across this group of giraffe in this small little valley over here. How cool is this? This is beautiful. Now there's a little bit of rain at the moment. We can't believe it. Just this little spitter spatter of rain.
And a rainbow.
Can you see the rainbow?
Slightly.
Okay. So there's apparently a rainbow that you might be able to see. Where's this rainbow, Morgan?
In between the road and the giraffe.
Oh yes, yeah, there is too. There's a small little rainbow. Morgan says you might be able to see it.
Gone now.
Ah, it's gone now. Pretty. It's always nice when you have a rainbow and then animals in between the rainbow. There's also some eland that's just next to these giraffe over here. Yeah, myself and Morgan, we were chatting earlier on, and of course this is the last Escape to Nature experience for, we don't know how long yet, but just taking a small break from it. But we've been talking about amongst ourselves as to what has been the most exciting or memorable sighting that we've had over the time that we went out during Escape to Nature. And yeah, it's difficult to say. Morgan says his was probably the cheetah out in Carnarvondale that caught that young springbuck. And yeah, and the cheetahs were learning to hunt, and then the cubs learning how to finish off the springbok. That was with Lauren. Myself, for me, I would say my most exciting things that we saw during the Escape to Nature, definitely there was one elephant sighting. I think I was with BK. That stood out very much to me. This elephant was mud wallowing there in the basin, and as this elephant was throwing mud onto his body, the wind was sort of traveling in our direction, and it sprayed mud on the camera a little bit in the lens. That was pretty cool, but it was a great sighting, that. And then also, of course, the secretary birds. How cool was that? When did we have the aardwolf? Was that during the sunrise safari? Yeah, that was sunrise safari. Okay. And I'm sure each to their own, and everybody out there has got their own little special sighting that they've enjoyed during the Escape to Nature experience. I would love to hear from the directors. What was their most memorable sighting there in the MC? Oh, nice one, Morgan. So Morgan, our director that's on duty this morning, she said hers was definitely the secretary birds. I was expecting that one, Morgan. I know you enjoyed it very much. We did take a turn in the basin where we suspect a couple of secretary birds are nesting. We never managed to find them or see the secretary birds, so yeah, we just moved on from that area. But one of the other guides who's out at Woodbury actually witnessed them rebuilding the nest. So it does seem like that is in progress, but it will be something to look forward to during sunrise and sunset safari. Look at all these giraffe just towering above everything else in the middle of this little dune valley. They do like this area. There's plenty of the sweet thorn and other thornfelt that grow here, and we often see giraffe out here. Don't know if you all remember with BK when we were watching giraffe and then suddenly they all started staring here in this area, right? And there's Dairy Road not too far from us, and they were all staring in the road in the direction of that road. Then we drove to the top and we took binoculars and we scanned and we didn't really see anything. And then after about 3 minutes of scanning, then we spotted a lioness laying right next to the road. Then we approached and of course we lost signal, so we had to go back up to where we originally were. But we noticed she had killed something as well. We didn't see what the kill was. And it was the giraffes that helped us out there. Okay, then one of our other directors, Nadine, she said that her favorite was seeing the cheetahs being chased by warthogs with Tessa. It was a few months ago. That must have been a pretty exciting sighting. Yeah, Morgan was also there. He says it was pretty good. Yeah, it's just amazing how warthogs become very courageous with cheetah, and they don't seem to be afraid of them, especially these big warthogs. Sometimes they even charge at the cheetahs, and the cheetahs just run for their lives. Ah, shame. Jordan, another director, said her favorite sighting was every sighting we had of that beautiful male lion. He became very popular in our mission control room, what we call MC. And they went crazy every time that we saw him. So each to their own. Everyone's got their own favorites, and I really respect that and appreciate that.
Wildwood's mission is an expensive one, but we know that our live experience is important to so many people that cannot afford to pay for it. We have added a donate button to our website. By donating, you are directly helping us share our free nature experiences with the world. We want Wild Earth to reach children, budding conservationists, and the less fortunate. A little money goes a long way. You can make a difference to someone today.
Nice. So Rolf had that caracal sighting for roughly 4 days in a row. Can you believe that? I do wonder where that caracal is now. It seemed like a young caracal, so probably still exploring. You never know, it just might surface again. I was very, very lucky, and he speaks about it often, actually. BK was here at the time. He speaks about that sighting plenty of times. If BK was on the vehicle now, he would say the same as you, Kathleen, that was his most memorable experience out here in Amakhala. I think what a perfect way to end off this Escape to Nature experience, and with giraffes. I mean, how more perfect can this get? Shame, they're really enjoying the sun up here. It hasn't been too cold, but you can imagine for giraffes, especially when the rain happened. It did cool down very quickly, but now I feel that it's starting to warm up quite nicely, and it's just ideal for them. And who knows, they might even come further up on the dune here or on the ridge. It's going to be awesome for the guests because there's a lodge not too far from us, Hlosi Lodge, and when the guides go on their game drive, I mean, it's not too far for them just to pop in here and have a look at these giraffe. So it all begins from the first minute on safari. And Ralph has also said his most memorable sighting was of that caracal. So thanks, Ralph, for sharing that. Sharing it with the world. That was incredible. I've actually got that video on my phone. And I sent it to my uncle, and he was amazed. Yeah, I would have to say that was probably one of the top sightings for Escape to Nature, I think so. When I look back at all the different sightings, definitely that caracal was right at the top of the list there. So well done, Ralph. And Amakala says hello, by the way. A lot of the chaps out here ask how you're doing. They look forward to you coming back here at some stage. Ah, Jules, that's a very kind comment. And thank you as well. No, we would not be out here if it wasn't for all of you. So thank you so much for, all taking part and feeding us questions as well. Yeah, Escape to Nature will always be a special thing for me because I started with Wild Earth almost a year ago. Sure, August will be a year. And I was, of course, on the dam cams. And the dam cams are very much included in the Escape to Nature experience. So for me, Escape to Nature will always be a special time in the day for me. And so it is heading off towards the end of the experience. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. I hope you've all enjoyed the Escape to Nature experience for all these months, and we look forward to coming back to you again soon. Hopefully it'll happen sooner than we think. But anyway, we are ending off. Hope you all have a fantastic day, and that we will see you in the Sunset Safari. Myself and Morgan will be off for the Sunset Safari, so you won't see us, but you'll see us tomorrow. Awesome stuff. Cheers.